Hi again. Here we are to continue talking about React Native, and in the last video we discussed some simple styles, and we created an example that looked like this. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to just explore styles for a little bit further, and then kind of examine the component a little bit closer, and then we'll come back to styles and talk about them more in depth. So this is where we are. Let's imagine we want to add a few more things to this view. So imagine there's some more information and stuff that we want to put in here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another view. So I'll just make some views here. Imagine these are our boxes that we want to draw on the screen. And they could contain other views. Each one of these views actually could have another text field in it too, or a couple text fields, right? But we'll just do them as view right now, okay? And what I want to do is I want to make a couple of these, but first I'm going to make one of them, and I'll just copy it, right? So I've got one here, and I want to give it a style. So I'll say style equals. Now, every time you create an attribute, this is creating properties that are passed into this React object. You know, this looks like an HTML tag, but it's actually, a class object from React, okay? So let me close that. So we're creating styles, and we're adding them here, right? Since we're using a JavaScript expression to assign the style, if the style was just a string, we could type it in here. But since we're assigning it as part of a JavaScript object, we need to put that into an expression, and then it has to be wrapped in the curly braces, okay? So we're getting all of our styles off the style sheet object that we created down here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to add some styles here for a class maybe called box, right? So I've got styles.box right here, and I'd like to add a new set of styles down here. So I'll put a comma at the end of, after title, and then I'll make a new key called box, and that will match the value here. And then I'll define, the properties for box. So let's create a box that'll have a background color of, let's make it kind of a magenta, right? And then we'll give it a width of 100 and a height of 100, okay? And then we'll try it out here. I'll refresh it, and there's my box, okay? Let's do a little more. So I said maybe we should have like 3 of these, right? So I'll just copy this one and then paste it twice, and then refresh over here, and then I've got 3 boxes. Now, they don't have any space around them, so just like in CSS, what we can do is we can add some margin, right? So margin doesn't change the size of the box. It kind of pushes out from the outside edge. So we'll say margin of 5. And now they each have 5 pixels, right? So that looks pretty good, but I'd like to be able to arrange these in here and use up the space, okay? So this will be like a really quick introduction to Flexbox, and we'll come back and revisit Flexbox in detail a little bit later, okay? But just to get started, you'll see that I gave the container a flex of 1. Okay, by doing that, the container takes up the entire space here. So that's why this gray background goes from the bottom all the way to the top, and from the left all the way to the right. Okay? When I say justify content center, it takes the content here, and places it in the middle. Okay, so since this is a flex box right here, it treats all the inner items as flex items, and they get centered. So that's why we have about an equal amount of space above and below here. Right, so this whole group of things is centered. Okay, if we set the flex direction to row, I'll have to put a comma here. Then when I rebuild, you can see all the things align on a row. So by default, the flex direction was column. Okay, so let's go back to row for a moment here. And I've got sort of a problem here is when I make this row, these elements have a width. So the text box has a width because it's, it's defined by how much text I put in there. So you can see it kind of gets pushed off. And each one of these pink boxes has a width of 100. So that's kind of a fixed amount. And, when Flexbox tries to arrange it, it's like, okay, well, I don't have as much space here to show these things, but they're wider than the space available. So they kind of just bleed off the edges. But they're justify content center. So, the overall width here centers these things in the container. Okay? Okay, so what happens if we do this? What if I take the width off of box here? So I'm going to just remove the width and height. Okay? So they'll still have margin 5. And then when I do that, I don't see anything, right? Well, I haven't given the width, right? So it doesn't know how big they are. Okay? Let's take another route. What if I put in flex 1? So the container is a flex item, but I'm going to declare the boxes also as a flex item. Okay? Now, you can see everybody fits on the screen, and what's happening is the computer is looking at the available space, and it's evenly distributing the flex items in the space. And actually, this text right here is not a flex item, so it has to just take up the width, the space that it uses, and then these flex items kind of fill what's left. Okay? So what happens if we make the title, like the text right here, if we make that a flex item? So I'll add title flex of 1. And now you'll see these are equally spaced all the way across the screen. So that's kind of interesting, right? So Flexbox, it's a lot like a stack view. So the things in here are kind of equally spaced. These kind of seem to be taking up a little more space because they have that margin of 5 pixels. So if I added a margin of 5 to the title, then it would kind of even out its space a little bit because it would get that 5 pixels margin also, right? Actually, what I should do is I should move this up a little bit here because the margin of 5 will overwrite the margin 20 at the top. So if I want to keep that margin 20 at the top, then I should write it like this, right? But anyway, there we go. So one more thing, right? So this should just get you started on Flexbox. So if you have a flex item, it'll fill the space available. If you have multiple flex items within a flex item, then they kind of divide the space up amongst themselves. And there's a couple ways that they can divide it up. Okay, and we'll kind of talk more about that later, but this is the general idea. The flex direction sets the direction of the, actually there's 2 directions for flex, and we'll get more into that later, but this is the main direction. So here we're mainly running everybody across the horizontal or the row. Okay, if I change this to column, then we'll have a vertical arrangement. Oh, so that's pretty useful, right? So anyway, so that should get you started on using style sheets and Flex, okay? And then we'll get more into details with Flex, but I wanna just cover it here, and then I also want to talk a little more about the components too and how they work. And you can see I've kind of composed a component here of an outer container view that contains 4 inner components, a text view and 3 more views, right? So we'll talk more about that in the next video. Okay, so thanks for watching.